I didn't introduce myself properly. My name is Pavan.
Yeah, Pavan, good to meet you. Pleasure.
Banachek. Is that okay to call you Banachek?
Absolutely, that's my name. It's my only name, actually. If you look at my ID, if you look at my passport, everything, it's just Banachek, which causes me huge problems at the airport. Because when you get a ticket, they want a first and a last name, because you can't buy it without a first name. So you have to put NFN or unknown or something like that. Then when you show up at TSA, they're like, wait, it doesn't match. I'm like, yeah, because NFN stands for no first name. Yeah, but that's your name. I'm going, no, that's not my name. Look at my ID. And then they got to get a supervisor. And then it's 45 minutes before I can get on the plane. So yeah, bad mistake doing that. I don't recommend it.
So now I got to ask the question. So
Sure.
give me the roots, like where you, obviously, is that an English accent?
It's an English accent. Okay, so I guess I'll go back to the beginning. I was born. But I was born in England in 1969. My mom and I, we went through America. My dad was a GI, American GI. They divorced when I was a year old. We moved back to England. She remarried. She had 2 kids. We immigrated to South Africa. She abandoned me when I was 9 with 2 brothers a year, 3 years old. I raised them by myself. We had nothing. I had 1 pair of clothes for the entire year. I dyed it a different color for the next year. Left there to go find my biological father, who was in Australia, lived there for a little bit, moved to Colorado. That family had some problems. So in high school, I moved out while I was in high school still. Had 3 jobs just so I could finish high school. And then I moved to Texas for 26 years, and now I'm in Las Vegas.
Right, so let me get this straight. You were 9 years old raising your
2 brothers, year and 3 years old, yeah.
By yourself?
This was right before everything happened with apartheid, because I left there in 1975, beginning in 1976 to go to Australia. So it was a different time, a different era. We had a stepfather, he was an alcoholic, so we had a roof over our heads, but we never saw him. We saw him maybe on Sundays. There was also a maid in the house. When I say maid, it sounds fancy now, but that was apartheid years. Keep in mind, a black man, a man of color, would cut your lawn with a little pair of shears and maybe get 25 cents. And a black maid would work in your house and maybe get $5-10, right? I remember I used to be on the bus and I would fight for people of color. I would sit where they sat, and I always got in trouble for this because I was from England, and it was different. I remember the rugby team came over, and they insisted that there be a place for people of color. And South Africans fought it, like really fought it. They didn't want it, but they did. And I remember the English rugby team, the Lions, won every match. So it was fantastic. Yeah.
What a story! Wow.
Yeah. So I started out on that. Now my story is pretty eclectic. I've done a little bit of everything. I'm a mentalist, and what a mentalist means is you take your 5 known senses, you create the illusion of a 6th sense. You use verbal communication, non-verbal communication to duplicate what psychic phenomena would look like if it was real. And I say would look like if it was real because I'm also in charge of the James Randi $1 Million Foundation. That's where we have $1 million for any psychic that could do anything on a proper scientific protocol. And I have tested psychics through the years and have not found a genuine one yet. Like they would get $1 million. All they have to do is show me they're psychic, and they haven't been able to. I've also debunked a lot of people, but I'm moving ahead in my story right there, and I'm also taking over the conversation. So let me get back to you.
This is all about you. So this is incredibly fascinating. Now, the thing is, I could never run an organization like that because I'm the most I want to believe.
Right.
I believe in magic, and I believe that everything is magical.
Yeah.
So for me, someone shows me a trick, it's magic.
I want to believe in it too, but it has to work within the confines of science. There's a difference between being entertained with this type of stuff and somebody saying they're a genuine psychic. Saying you're a genuine psychic, saying that everything you do is done by NLP, and then duplicating doing the things that I do is a lie. A lie is a lie is a lie. And it also hurts science. So let me go back to when I'm going to go back to South Africa for you, because I remember I was about, I don't know, what was I about? Maybe 13 years old, and there was a man, this is back in the 1970s and 1980s, right? There was a man by the name of Uri Geller. I don't know if you know who Uri Geller is. He was the first psychic that ever claimed that he could actually bend metal objects with his mind. He became famous all around the world. And he was coming to South Africa. Now, we didn't have television. All we had was radio, Springbok radio. And he had announced that he was going to cause people to bend metal objects themselves in their own homes. So I was ready, right? I walked around the house. I found a piece of metal that I thought I might be able to bend, which happened to be a needle in my mom's sewing kit she had left behind. He came on, he did some things, and then he said, all right, go get your medal. I went and got mine. I came to the radio after the break. He said, all right, you concentrate on yours. So I held my little needle up, and I concentrated on it. I believed it was going to bend, concentrated on it, and it bent on a micro level, very small micro level. I believed that it had actually bent. Now, why wouldn't I want to have this superpower, right? I mean, here I was a poor kid. I had nothing. I wanted to impress my brothers. And it wasn't until years later, after I found my biological father, we moved to Colorado, I picked up a book written by James the Amazing Randi. And it said that this superhero, this guy that could bend metal with his minds, was nothing more than a magician. And that was the truth. And the book was called The Truth About Uri Geller. And from that book, I started reading about a couple of different methods to make it appear like you were bending keys with your mind. I started bending keys for people, making it look like I was doing it with my mind. I started creating other methods that even performers use today. And then I ended up, I was in school, I remember I wrote Randy a letter. Didn't think he was going to reply, right? There's this author of this book. Never thought he was going to reply. I said, if you ever need a kid to convince scientists this stuff is real, I'd be happy to do so. He wrote me back. He said, look, if you're ever in the area, come visit. At one point, I had the opportunity to be in New Jersey. I went in to go visit him. Now, keep in mind, the Amazing Randy was a magician. You walk up to his house, and it was exactly what you think a magician's house would be. The door opened from the wrong side, right? Not where the hinges were. The clock in the house went backwards, right? He had a bookcase that opened up. He had doves, macaws. He had cats. He had anything that you would think a magician would have, he would have. So I went in, I met him, and he never asked to see anything. He didn't ask me to perform for him, didn't ask me to do anything. And I was very disappointed. I left. And what I had found out years later, that the reason he didn't ask me at that time to perform is he wanted to see my character. He wanted to be able to tell scientists, if the opportunity ever came about, that here's this kid, he taught himself. Can you imagine if I had taught him what he would have been able to do? So let me move back a little bit further on that too. I had been, after I read the book, I started creating all these methods to bend metal objects and convince people I was psychic. I was pretending to be psychic. And before that, I was the shy kid. I was the kid in the back of the classroom. Keep in mind, think about my upbringing, right? Mm-hmm. I'm this kid in the back of the classroom with a heavy coat on, afraid that the teacher's going to call on me. I never really had a home. All of a sudden, the home became where I was performing. It could be on a cafeteria floor, it could be on a stage, didn't matter where it was. I had found a home. And I think I got my confidence to write Randy that letter originally saying that I would love to visit him and I'd love to fool the scientist, right? I think I got that confidence because there was a policeman who had a cop car, and he said, can you bend some keys for me? I said, yeah, well, don't give me a key that's important. And he gave me the key to his police car, to his police unit, and I bent it, and he couldn't get in his car. And he had to call the department to come in and bring new keys for him. And so it was right after that that I actually wrote Randy that letter. Now, I never thought the occasion would come about. Back in those years, back in the 1970s, James S. McDonnell Douglas aircraft, right? He had the Phantom, the Spirit, all these big planes, everything. He had all the defense contracts for making the planes. He gave $500,000 to Washington University to study psychic phenomena. Now, keep in mind, up until this point, the scientists had lamented for many, many years there's no evidence of ESP on a proper scientific protocol due to lack of funding. It was my contention, even at a young age, had nothing to do with that. It had nothing to do with nothing to do with the funding. Wasn't the reason they weren't getting results. The reason they weren't getting results was because of their pro-biases. Because they already believed in this phenomena, like you mentioned just a minute ago, how you want to believe in this. They already believed, so they weren't using proper science. And not just that, because they had PhDs, they thought they were too smart to be fooled, so they wouldn't use proper scientific protocol. So anyway, $500,000 was given to Washington University. I went in there along with another kid by the name of Mike Edwards, and we convinced the top scientists for 4 years that we were genuine psychics, only to come out at the very end and say that it was all a hoax. And it was in contention with what the scientists already said, because they said, look, if you think you can introduce a magician into the scientific lab and get away with it, go ahead, by all means, you won't be able to do it. So they were asking for that, basically, right? Because when we came out and said it was all a hoax, at the very end, they said, well, it's not right to fool scientists in the name of science. And I'm like, well, it's not right to take money in the name of science and not use proper science. Anyway, let you get back to some questions.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I would argue, or not argue. My viewpoint is that science, magic. What's the difference?
Oh, there's a huge difference. There's a huge difference because you get that with a lot of the mediums, right? You have the mediums out there right now, and there's a plethora of them right there, right? And I know how they all do the trickery that they do. And people will say to me, well, they make people feel good. What's wrong with making people feel good? And I'm like, well, I can give crack to a junkie. It's going to make him feel good. Doesn't mean it's good for him. So with the mediums, right, what they're doing is they're putting a stop to the grieving process. The grieving process is really important. If you lose somebody, you have to go through all those stages of the grieving process to move on, to stay with the living. I had a very good friend. Her son died of cancer, 10 years old. Very sad. She had 2 daughters. She had a husband. And she went to a medium, and the medium convinced her she could talk to her dead son. She stopped talking to her husband. She stopped talking to her kids, the living ones, right? Because she was trying to fill this hole, understandably so. Mm-hmm. She almost lost her husband, almost lost her kids. And this story has been told 1,000 times because it happens consistently. People get lost in the dead and they stop living. So that's part of the problem right there. I mean, you wouldn't want a clown who knows nothing about math doing your taxes, would you? If he just came up to you and said, hey, I'll do your taxes for you, no problem. I'm an expert, and lie to you. You certainly wouldn't want that happening. You wouldn't want a lawyer who really didn't, hadn't gone to school. You wouldn't want that person working for you. So it's the same thing in that world, right? And all you have to do, like I said, $1 million. And I feel that they have an obligation to really prove that it's genuine. Not keep making money by doing readings, doing these things, because if it was real, it would change science. It would be amazing. I keep looking and I keep looking because I really want to find somebody that has an ability, but I haven't found one yet. I found a lot of crazy people too. This is the thing with $1 million, right? Is we have to be really, really careful because you get a lot of crazy people that come out. You get a lot of people that are mentally disabled as well. And so we have to be real careful with those people. We had one guy that came out and said that he could cause people to pee on demand. So we said, all right, we'll test it. So we took a guy, we put him in a big diaper, sat him in a chair and said, go at it. Wasn't able to do it. Had another guy that said he can cause, his mustache curls when he's in the presence of ghosts. And I was like, how are we going to test this? He says, well, you find a real ghost, put him in a room, and my mustache would curl. I'm like, if I could find a real ghost, I'd have the $1 million, right? I had another guy that said he could stop earthquakes. And I said, all right, how are we going to test this? Because we always would ask, like, how do you think we should test this? And then we would try to work within those confines, but make it scientific. Mm-hmm. And what he said to me was, he said, you're gonna find a genuine psychic. I'm like, all right, if I can find a genuine psychic, they would get the $1 million. But let's say they're a billionaire, right? They don't care about having the money. They just don't care about it. And they're willing to let you have that money. How are we gonna test it from there? He said, well, I'm gonna predict when an earthquake's gonna happen. Your psychic will validate my prediction, and then I'll stop the earthquake before it happens. I was like, wait, so let me get this right. You are going to stop an earthquake that you're going to predict. Is that the way it's going to happen? And then that big earthquake happened in Haiti, and never heard from the guy ever again because he hadn't predicted it.
So, my point about magic and science is, if you look at human existence, right, and go back, whatever, when we were just living in the jungle, right? Just our brains and our hands and earth, right? And over X thousands of years, here we are today where we took the same dirt and made this electronic camera that can take our picture and just beam it all over the world, right? So I see that as magic.
It is magic.
Even though it's science, right? We can explain it. It's still magic, and the magic is that our ability to create and imagine and take dirt and make it into that wonderful camera and everything else that we have around us.
Imagining something and trying to bring it to fruition is very different than conning people.
Yes.
Like if you know it's a trick, you know it's not real.
Right.
Let's say you went back in time right now, right? Would you feel a little bit of an obligation if an eclipse happened and maybe they're killing, murdering people, but sacrificing people because they think the gods are angry, right? Would you feel an obligation to tell them the truth and explain the science behind it, if you could without getting killed yourself? You know, would you feel an obligation to do that, or would you let them continue to sacrifice people?
Yes, exactly. And I agreed. I get your point.
So my point is, con men
Yes.
I expose,
Yes.
right? There's another con man I expose, an evangelist by the name of Peter Popoff, and I'll talk about him in just a minute. But I want to finish on your question because I see you have more coming. Yes.
No, I agree with 100%. But you can con people, which is just the same thing as using science to kill somebody. A gun's a product of science, and you can use it and shoot and kill somebody. So you can do bad things with your talents, and you can do good things with talents.
Right.
Right. So the medium, which is milking the money, which is actually with the proper training and the proper direction, can be probably a very good therapist, and could actually help people with that kind of talent, being able to read people and being able to help them along. But they're using their skills and their powers for evil.
They are. And they're using it really because so that they can profit. And that profiting isn't always about money, because there are some situations where they say, well, they're not really making money, but they're getting secondary gain. They're getting attention they don't get within their normal life, right? So I just have a problem when it comes to people lying and when it comes to people conning people, and they know that they are. Do I go after all the readers that do tarot card readings and things like that? No, even though I know the BS, I'll go after the tarot card aspect of it, and I'll explain and talk about that. But I'm not going to necessarily go after the mom and pop who believe that this is what they're doing is absolutely genuine. I'm going after the con men. I'm going after the balance bracelets, which I helped put them into a $52 million settlement, right? I expose these type of things where people are actually fleecing people of money, or as I said, Peter Popoff, and you want to talk about people actually dying because of these things. Well, psychic surgery, I mean, that's, you've had a lot of people, I know stories of people, villages that have actually saved money to send somebody to a psychic surgeon and that person ends up dying. Psychic surgery, for those that don't know, is where you take your bare hands and you dig into somebody's stomach and you bring out the bad parts and you throw them away, and it's usually just chicken livers, blood and guts. And if you go online, you can see, I've done the exact same thing many times, exposing it. But Peter Popoff was an evangelist. So after I did that with the amazing Randy, he came to Houston, Texas one time, and he was giving a lecture, and he said, hey, do you want to join me? I'm doing an article, I think it was like Penthouse or something like that, on evangelists. I said, okay, that's a weird combination, but all right, I'll go with you. So we show up at this huge arena, and man, there was thousands of people in this arena, right? And Peter Popoff comes out. Well, first of all, there's some other people that go on stage, and then Peter Popoff comes out, the Reverend Peter Popoff, and he said he could talk to God. He was getting the word of God, like, God talks to him directly, and God can help him heal people. So I'm sitting up there, and I'm watching this, and he's causing people who can't walk to walk again. He's causing people that can't see to see again. He's healing people left and right, and it's very emotional. I even had tears in my eyes, even though I knew what was going on. Well, sort of knew what was going on. I knew some of it. And there became a point where Popoff asked for people to collect money for him, and he had these big buckets, right? So you go down, and what you do is you go around, and people throw cash in. So I got about $10,000 worth of cash in this bucket. And I have to walk out the auditorium and walk back in to get back to. I'm thinking I could just walk out with this if I wanted to, but I didn't, because I'm ethical. So I come back, you pour that out. Now you go get sealed offerings, and these are like checks. So who knows how much money was in that? I'm getting all these envelopes with checks in. Come out, pull those out. Then you go out a third time, and anything else that people want to give, and they're giving watches, they're giving jewelry, they're giving, diamonds, and you come out, you pour that into a big old bucket. And as I'm down there, I look up, and I notice he had no ear hole. There was a piece of plastic in his ear. So I went back to Randy in the auditorium. I said, look, either this man of God can't heal himself, or something else is going on. And he said, no, I think he's using mnemonics, because he was giving out a lot of information, like where people lived, their doctor's name, their ailments, and everything else. Now mnemonics, those are memory systems, right? It's a memory system to memorize stuff. And I know a lot about mnemonics because I use them all the time. And I said, with mnemonics, you either know a lot about a few things or you know a few things about a lot of things. You don't know that many things about that many things. Something else is going on. So what we did when he went back to California, let me get to this point, right? There's a part at the very end where he tells everybody to throw up their medications. So there's like digitalis pills, there's all these kind of things.
Wow. Okay.
So people go home, people are dying.
Yeah.
People come to these things hours and hours ahead of time against their doctor's orders and they die. And he doesn't care because he's going off to make money. So we go to California and I get a friend from MIT there and he does a whole scan of the auditorium ahead of time for any frequencies that are known. Blocks those out because we're looking for new frequencies, right? The moment Popoff hits the stage, a brand new frequency pops up. And it turns out that God broadcasts on 39.17 megahertz, I think it is. It sounds an awful lot like Peter Popoff's wife, right? And she's saying things like, hey, Petey, you know, nod your head, because here's the thing, they videotaped every single one of these for their TV show every week. So the trucks were all outside and she's out in one of the trucks and she's watching all the cameras. She's like, hey, nod your head if you can hear me, Petey, because if you can't, it's gonna be a problem. And you see him nod his head, you know, and he's like, you know, there's a lady by the name of Mrs. Johnson. She's back in the third row wearing bright yellow. She's got cancer in she's got tumors. Make her run up and down the aisle and shake those titties. And just really nasty stuff. There was stuff about, you know, African American people that would just would put you off 100%, right? And he's basically giving people this information, and then he brings them up and he's healing them. And it's not the word of God. I knew exactly what he was doing. What it is people are filling out prayer cards ahead of time in the lobby. They're switching those out, and those are going out to Mrs. Popoff. Another thing that we found out that Mrs. Popoff would walk around, like I said, people come to these things hours ahead of time. Walk up, shake hands. Hi, I'm Mrs. Popoff. What's your name? Who's your doctor? Where are you from? I hope my husband gets to you tonight. She's got a big tape recorder in her purse. She goes out, she transcribes that. And then they used a lot of tricks like the Catherine Coleman wheelchair trick, right? This is where you make it appear that somebody who couldn't walk could walk again. They wait for somebody coming in, again, people come in hours ahead of time, who has a cane. And they say, can't walk really well, but can walk. And they say, you know what? I can put you in a wheelchair. You'll be right up front. Maybe Popoff will get to you. He'll be close to you. What's your name? Who are you? You know, who's your doctor? What's your ailment? Yeah, well, I hope he gets to you this evening. They go out, they transcribe that, and they're putting him in a wheelchair. The man of God comes out. At some point, he turns to that person. He says, hey, Joe, your doctor says you can't walk. Is that right? And the guy thinks this is the man of God. I'm not going to question him. He must mean never be able to walk properly ever again. And of course, he says yes. So everybody in the auditorium thinks this guy can't walk. They don't look that he's got a cane. They go, oh, why does a man who can't walk have a cane? You know, it doesn't make sense. But anyway, so Popoff says, I say you can. God says you can. He takes the guy's cane, breaks it, throws it away. He don't care it's an expensive cane. It's not his cane, right? He tells the man to stand. The man stands. First miracle. A man that couldn't even walk is now standing. He says, take a few steps. The guy hobbles a couple of steps. Second miracle. Now a man's walking that couldn't walk, right? Then Popoff sits in the chair. He says, go to the back of the chair. You know, push me. He goes to the back of the chair. He pushes him. Now, it's like a walker. He can keep up with it, right? And here's a piece de resistance. He takes the chair, puts it back where it was. He says, that's your chair, right? Meaning, like, if you get out of that chair and you go over there, I go, that's your chair. You're going to say yes. You're not going to take this hotel chair home with you, are you? No. Yes. But for right now, that's your chair. Yes. He says yes. The man goes, sits in his chair, and you've seen this whole miracle happen. Anyway, so we took this, and so we had this, we did a whole bunch of other things too. We had a friend by the name of Don Henvick, and he was really good. We went to a lot of these occasions. And he was healed of many different things. One time, he dressed up as a woman, and he was healed of ovarian cancer. Now, keep in mind, this was the day when men were men and women were women, not like nowadays, right? Yeah, you can't be cured of ovarian cancer if you're a man. So, but he was cured of ovarian cancer. So what we did, we took this to the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson back in the day. And first of all, this is the one time they didn't tell Johnny what was going to happen. Johnny always wanted to know everything that was going to happen. Like, he didn't want any surprises. Said, no, Johnny, you're going to want to see this. Like, you know, you want to see it live. We want to see your reaction. So they showed the video of Popoff talking to people, healing people, just a few cuts of it. And then they showed the second with Mrs. Popoff's voiceover. Mm-hmm. And Johnny, in the middle of it, goes, "Oh, shit." Which back in those days, you couldn't have SHIT on the air. You can now. It's nothing, you know. And so that's the only time one of the only times Johnny's show was actually edited, was to get that piece out. So Popoff at first said that it wasn't his wife, that we had faked it. But then we were able to prove over time it was Popoff's wife. And then he came out and he said, I thought everybody thought I knew I did these things to enhance the Word of God. And then later on, he was off the air for a while, but he's back now. And he's working really hard on the urban communities who didn't know much about him back then. Yeah. So that's the kind of people that I expose.
But again, that's bad stuff.
It's bad stuff.
These are bad people.
And there's a lot of bad stuff out there. Here's the problem with this, right? You're a critical thinker.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're successful, you're a critical thinker. But these things chip away at critical thinking, piece by piece by piece. And critical thinking is almost something you have to do every day. You got to think, with all the scams and the cons, all the cons in real estate, all the phone scams, you know, all the medical scams that are out there, you know, homeopathy, all that stuff. It's bigger than it ever was. It's just done in different ways now, right? And I mean, take a look at the mediums, right? Mediums used to be very different. It all goes back to actually two little girls that lived in Rochester. And they fooled their parents into believing they could communicate with a ghost that was in their house. And it started out with them having a string on an apple. And these were called the Fox sisters, these two girls. And it was behind their bed. And they would hear one thump for no, two thumps for yes. And they convinced their mom, you know, that there was a ghost in the house. They convinced the reverend that there was a ghost in the house. Well, they couldn't keep using the apple. So what they did was they figured out that they could actually click their knuckles in their shoes. And they had a way to do that it would make it sound like the rap was coming from different places. Like if I pressed against the table and did that, it could sound like the rap's coming from on the other side of the table. And next thing you know, because of the Fox sisters, spiritualism took off. It went beyond the little farmhouse that they lived in, beyond the counties. It went all over the world. And the cat got out of the bag at that point. And that's when we started getting table tilting, where the tables were floating. And that's where you started getting people being tied up in spirit cabinets. And people actually believed in these things. People wouldn't believe in those things now. So the evangelists, I mean, the mediums have had to go a different route. And it's simply like, I'm getting a J and I'm getting an S. And they're doing things like cold reading, heart reading. Heart reading is where you get information about people online. Cold reading is where you just take chances and you guess. And so they've gone a whole different route now, but it's the same old scam.
Yeah, get in my head and rattle some of those peanuts.
Rattle some of those peanuts. Yeah. All right. Well, let's see what we can do. I wonder if I should, I'm trying to think if I should do, yeah, let's go with the books first. Let's do that. All right. So I got a few books here. I'd like you to take a look at them. You may have even read some of these books. Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, How to Enjoy Your Life and Job by Dale Carnegie. And then there's just a fun book. It's an autobiography of Billy Joel.
Yeah.
I don't know if you like Billy Joel or not. I always was a big fan of Billy Joel. Yeah. So hand me one of the books. All right, good. So we're going to play a little game, really simple, all right? Okay. How to Enjoy Your Life and Job by Dale Carnegie. If I go through the book like that, you can see the first word at the top of every page is different, yes?
Yes.
At some point, you're going to say stop. You'll look at the first word at the top of the page. Now, that's a word, obviously, you can see, but I can't because it's facing you.
Okay.
Skeptical people like yourself, which is good. It means you're not gullible. They say you memorized every word with every page. So I'm going to hold it closed on the page numbers. They're all at the bottom right there. I'll hold it closed so I don't know what page you're at. So just say stop anytime.
I'm only seeing the white.
Yeah, that doesn't matter. You'll see it in a minute. I'll open it all the way once you, just say stop anytime.
Stop.
Look at the first word at the top of that page.
Okay.
You got it?
Okay.
Look at me. See all the letters in your word right here, right now.
Yeah.
Think of any letter somewhere in the middle of your word.
Okay.
I got two like you changed.
Huh?
I got two letters like you changed, like you thought of one and went with another. Are you thinking of an N? You did for 1 second. There's a T right after that, isn't there?
Yes.
Is your word contract?
Yes.
Yeah? Yeah, pick up that book.
Okay.
Say stop anytime.
Stop.
That's page 112. Turn to page 112 in that book, but hold it up so I can't see where you're at. Hold it up, don't let me see it.
Okay.
Look at the first word at the top of that page, not the of these 7 habits of highly effective people. That's at the top of every page. Makes my job easy when people do that. The
Okay.
first word, look at me.
Okay.
Think of how many letters are in your word. I won't watch you count. Tell me when you're done.
Okay.
When I first did think I got 7, but then you actually counted, it's 8, isn't it? Is it 8 letters?
Let me count again. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
You thought 7 there for a minute, didn't you? Yeah. Is your word marriage?
Yes, it is.
So that's just getting in. Here, we'll try one more. Since we're in Vegas, I got a die.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
You can use the books, or you can just do it on the couch. I don't care either way.
Okay.
So, what I want you to do is, I want you to. Do you ever gamble?
Occasionally.
Occasionally. Have you rolled dice?
Yes.
So you play dice games for money. That's great. All right. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to get a number between 1 and 6 in your head right now. Don't tell me what it is. You have it?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to turn my head. You're going to put that number so it's face up. Don't even let the camera see it, right?
Okay.
And keep your hands over it like that when you're done. All right. So tell me when you're done.
Okay.
You done? You got it covered?
Yeah.
All right. So you're not going to choose a 1. That's a losing number. Probably won't go with 6. That's too obvious. You won't go with an odd number because you're not trying to fool me yet. You probably went with an even number. I'm going to say it's a 2. What is it?
It's a 2.
It's a 2.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're going to do it again because we're dealing with your conscious mind. Then I want to deal with your subconscious mind.
Okay.
All right. So get a different number in your head. Got it? Don't tell me.
Okay.
Put that number face up. Tell me when you're done.
I'm done.
You're probably going to stay with an even number, which means you're not going to go with a 3 again. You won't go with a 1 losing. I mentioned the 6 too many times last time. The only number we didn't mention that would be even would be, it would be 4.
Yes, that's right.
Is that what it is? All right. So here's the thing. There's a 4 on top. Do you know what number's on the bottom?
No.
They always add up to 7.
I
So it's
see.
going to be a 3,
Okay,
right?
gotcha.
So it's a 5 over here. There's a 2 over there. There's a 6 over there, and a 1 over there. So now consciously and subconsciously, you know where every single number is. I want to deal with your subconscious mind. So we're going to do it on the book right there, okay? Because I don't
Okay.
want it to move around. You're going to cover the die. Cover it with both hands. Both
Okay.
hands. Every time I say flip, you're going to flip it once.
Okay.
Okay, just to the side somewhere. Don't keep going back and forth because I want you to lose what number's on top.
Okay.
All right, I'm hoping your subconscious retains it, but your conscious won't. So go ahead and flip it one time.
Okay.
Again, I'm trying not to look because I don't want you to accidentally show me. Flip it again.
Okay.
One more time. And let's
Okay.
just do it one more time. Tell me when you're done.
Okay.
Do you know what number's on top? If I asked you, don't look, but what do you think it is?
I have no idea.
You have no idea. If I asked you to guess, what would you say?
I guess 2.
You guess 2. And that would be wrong because that's your conscious mind. We're going to use the subconscious, all right?
Okay.
So look at me, and if the camera can get a good view of him too, you're going to see him lie, and he won't even know he's lying. So here's the thing. I'm going to ask you questions, and each time you're going to say no. Do you understand?
Yes.
No, say no.
Huh?
Say no. Yeah, okay. No, I'm done
Okay,
messing
okay.
with you. So you're going to say no every time. Is it a 2?
Is what a 2?
Just say no every time.
Okay.
Is it a 2?
No.
Is it a 6?
No.
A 5?
No.
Okay, see, on the 5, you answered really quick. On all the other ones, you paused. You took time with it. But on that one, you did not. You answered right away. That means it's probably more than likely, it could be wrong, but your subconscious thinks it's a 5. Take a look. So that's me duplicating what psychic phenomena would look like. I just got done doing 637 shows at the Strat. I had a residency there for the last 3 years. Now I'm on the road traveling. I'm doing cruise ships. I'm doing trade shows. I'm doing corporate gigs. And I'm on a brand new venture where we're opening up these little rooms around the United States and actually around the world. We're working on a few other locations too. And they're called Wiggle Rooms. And it's an immersive entertainment. It'd be like 60 people or less. Some might be only 25 people. And it's where it's not just magicians. It's not like me, like I'm a mentalist. It's a subcategory of magic. But it's going to be people like a chef that come in. It's people that have interesting stories to tell. Kind of like what we've been talking about here, the interesting stories, right? They have an interesting, intimate story to tell about their life. And some of these people are celebrities. So that's my new passion. That's the thing that I'm really excited about right now. Not that you asked, but I knew subconsciously I was reading your mind. You're like, all right, what is he doing now? Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is. It is absolutely, yeah.
One day you're going to tell me how I did that book trick, the word guessing trick. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible. But I prefer to believe you're a psychic. I will believe it.
I hope not. You see, here's the thing for me with this stuff, right? It is so much more exciting to me if I can tell you it's a trick, and then I do something and you go, it has to be real. There's no way that could be fake, right?
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't be a good trick if it didn't look real.
Yes.
People used to ask me that about David Copperfield. They say, did he really make the Statue of Liberty disappear? And I'd go, well, yes and no. I mean, it's a trick. Like he's a magician. What do you expect, right? But people wanted to believe that it was actually real as well. So, but I think there's a point where you can suspend your belief, kind of like when you go to a play, and logically you know that it's a trick. You have to understand that it is. You have to understand. A lot of mentalists, the other mentalists out there, when I first started performing, every mentalist wanted you to believe that they were a real psychic, right? And I felt icky about that. I didn't feel right, because to me, I was lying to the people. A lie is a lie is a lie. It's one thing to say, hey, I'm a magician, because as a magician, you have a contract with the audience that you're going to fool them. But as a mentalist, most people don't know what a mentalist is. And so a lot of mentalists would say, look, you wouldn't stop in the play and say, hey, I'm really not Macbeth. Well, of course you wouldn't, because that's context. You know that it's a play. But when I go on stage and I start doing these impossible things they've never seen before, and I don't say that it's magic, they're going to believe whatever it is I tell them. And because really, like you can get a neurosurgeon on the same stage, and if he's giving a lecture about the human brain, you don't think he's an actor. You quickly realize, oh, this is a real doctor. He knows what he's talking about. So whatever explanation I give them is going to be what they consider to be the real one, right? There's a mentalist, another very famous mentalist by the name of Darren Brown. Darren Brown became really famous. I wrote a bunch of books, and from those books, that's where sort of Darren got his start, from a lot of the things I put into the books. And then he took it off to a whole new level. And he started telling people everything he did was NLP. So people were believing they could take these high-end, very costly NLP courses, and they'd be able to do the type of things that I just showed you. That is never going to happen. A lie is a lie is a lie. So for me, it's really important to let people know, you know, I'm not a real psychic. And then I get into that context, I get into that character of being able to actually read your mind. And then I remind you, it's not real, it's not psychic. It's even more amazing if you know you're being fooled, but you don't know how you're being fooled.
Yeah, but I think my point is that it's fun to believe. Right.
It's fun, but it's also dangerous to believe. It's fun to believe in the moment, right? It's fun to believe when you're reading that book, that you're immersed in that book and that story in that moment. But then when you're done with it, you come back out of it and you go, okay, that was just a fantasy. When you go see a play, it's fun to be caught up in the play where you're like, you're watching this thing as if it's actually reality in that moment. And it's beautiful, it's funny, it's sad, and it's taking you on this roller coaster journey where you get caught up in it and you cry. You know, I'm a big baby when it comes to movies. I'll watch a movie and I'll cry. And then after, like, oh, what was I crying about? That wasn't real. The dog didn't really die, you know. So those are nice things to escape reality in that moment. But when we're back out into the real world, I think we have to know that these things, we have to know we can be fooled. Because if I can fool you with this, maybe you'll question before somebody else just feeds you a bunch of BS and they're trying to con you and take advantage of you. You might even just sit there and go, look, I don't know if this is real. I'm going to do more research. The smartest thing a person can say when they don't know something is, I don't know. Unfortunately, kids are harassed in school if they say they don't know. Oh, you're an idiot, you're stupid. And that's not true. When I used to do a bunch of high school shows, I would perform things like this. I'd get on stage and I'd say, how many of you believe this is real? And because they just seen impossible things, most of them would raise their hands. I believe it's real. I say, how many of you believe it? It's not. And you get 4 or 5 kids that would raise their hands and say it's not. And I say, well, why do you think it's not? And one kid might say, because my dad told me it's not real. Another kid might say, well, because I saw somebody on TV that said it was not real, like a famous actor or somebody, you know. I say, you're right. And they get a big smile on their face. And I'd say, but for the wrong reasons. You know, I believe that this stuff was real because all the adults around me back in the time when I was in South Africa, they all believed it was real. I didn't question it until I read that book. And when I read that book back then, I was looking at it and I started to get angry at myself because I really quickly realized that because people are in a position of authority doesn't always make them right. And I think that's something people have to understand, that just because a person's in a position, we found that out during COVID, right? Just because people are in positions of authority doesn't mean they're right about every single thing.
100%.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more on that point.
And I think that's why we got so confused during everything that happened with COVID, because most people had stopped thinking critically. It was a scary time. Everybody was scared, right? We didn't know, there was no precedent for this, for us, for people. And so we were listening to the authorities, and we weren't allowed to question.
Yeah.
If you questioned, you were called a racist, a bigot, you were called ignorant, you were called stupid, just because you were questioning something. There's nothing wrong with questioning things. It's how we learn, it's how we find out what's right and what's wrong. And if it's right, it should stand up to scrutiny.
Incredible.
Well, thank you.
Incredible. The last thing I want to kind of bring it all back together is what you're saying about these things is how people right now think about AI, which is science, but people think it's magic.
Yeah, they do.
And what I try to do as much as I can is say, no, it's just science.
Well,
And
wasn't
it's
it
just
Arthur C. Clarke that said, and I'm paraphrasing now because I don't remember the exact thing, but it was something along like new technology is indistinguishable from magic until we understand it, right?
Yes.
And that's the thing with AI. I'm not scared of AI, but I do think we need to question it. I do think we need to take a look at every area of it, and we do need to know how to keep it contained.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what people are really afraid of. Yeah. And the thing is, we are in charge. It's using it for good, it's using it for the right things, and making sure that it doesn't get beyond us at some point. Or maybe it should get beyond us, but we need to have the control.
Yeah, and I think the way to keep it contained, very much like the way you can keep a charlatan a charlatan mentalist contained, is through knowledge. Right? Is when everyone knows that this is what it is. It's an amazing tool, just like your skills as a mentalist can be an amazing tool to help people, or it could be incredibly destructive.
Yep.
You can take advantage of people. The same thing with AI. It could be an amazing tool to help people, to uplift them and deliver money to them, or it could be used by a few corporations, centralize it, and they can use it to take money from you.
Exactly right.
And I'll give you an example of how big mega corporations are using AI to take money from you right now, and they're taking a lot of money from you, and most people don't even realize it, and they don't like to talk about it. So what the big corporations have done, they've built artificial intelligence trading platforms, and now they've built them like bond and stock trading, right? Now they built them using quantum computers, which very few people have access to.
Right.
Okay, so already their trading platforms were arguably unfair, right? Because they got technology that no one else has, and now with the quantum computers, they could get ahead of your trade in by microseconds.
Yep.
Right. They know how you're going to trade. If you're going to buy or sell, they know that before you know that. Okay, so what's happening is that all of our money is being slowly taken from us, and we don't even realize it. Right? Because when you're trading, if someone's consistently making money, they're using technology to consistently making money, then somebody else is consistently losing money.
Right.
Right, and guess who's losing money? It's the people who don't have
the access.
Don't have the access to them. That's the rest of us. That's the average person, right? So that's an application of magic being used to take your money, and it's happening every day, and it's legal.
Well, I
It's
think
legally
the
happening.
thing on that is, like you said, knowledge, right?
Right.
People being aware of these things, being aware of that, not letting that be hidden.
Right.
And that's where you should be able to question these things.
Yes.
Because if you question these things, questioning knowledge is power.
Yes.
And if you don't have that knowledge, you don't have the power. The
Yeah.
people that have the power keep the power that way. So
Yes.
you're absolutely right about that, 100%. Yeah.
Right. And then, going back full circle that's why I say that the real magic is in you, right? Like, look inside you and use your brain, use that magic, and anything is possible, because it's that inner magic that has created the world that we see around us today with all of this technology. Is because, remember, whatever it was 100,000 years ago, a million years ago, it was just us in the forest.
It was,
right?
yeah, and everything was magical.
Right.
Every single, we just had to
Right.
navigate our way around those things,
Exactly.
right? Exactly.
It was just our hands, our brains, sticks and stones.
We're in a whole
we
different
built it.
landscape now, but we'll learn to navigate this
Yeah.
if we question it, if we learn, if we stay in those rails, right?
Yeah.
Stay in the rails and don't get off the rails, and don't let anybody park you somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with
Yes. And what I love about what you just did and showed me today is that it's a trick,
Yep.
right? But you're showing me that so much is possible.
Exactly.
Right. That hey, if I practice, I learn the same skills that you have. I can do this, and it can look like I can read minds. It can look like, all of these things are possible. They can bend metal and so forth. Okay. So at the end of the day, right, you're really educating people that nothing is beyond reach, and that's what we say here.
In many ways, actually, in a way. I like to also think, I came from nothing, and yet here I am successful. And it's because I gained knowledge, it's because I used that knowledge, and it's because I took it on the right path. I like to think I did, at least. I like to think that I've helped people.
I think you have.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty obvious you have.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank
Well,
you.
this has been a pleasure.
Great conversation.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
One of the best